I hope that you have all made a start on making your questionnaires, because your report is due next week on Friday, 5 o'clock. So please make sure that you are going to make a start very soon on writing your report if you have not already done so. You should have made your questionnaire by now. Some of you have showed me your questionnaire, and I'm very pleased to see the questionnaires that have been coming my way. You are supposed to be finding questions, making questions on your terms of reference. Your report is on selecting 10 to 12 people in a community. Some of you still not sure. What is the title of my report? The title of your report should be something like a report on the residents of Panapasa Avenue, Namandi Heights, to find their opinions on mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. So a very good title would include the name of your community.
So can you repeat again, please?
Yes, I will say it very slowly. A report on the residents. I'm just giving this as an example. Residents, residents, of Panapasa Place, Namandi Heights, Suva, to find their opinions about mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. Shall I repeat it again?
Yes, please.
Please.
Okay, a report on the residents of all 9 University of the South Pacific to find their opinions on mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. Got it? Again, shall I repeat it again? No problem. So COVID-19, capital C, capital O, capital V, capital I, capital D, dash 19. I saw all sorts of spellings of COVID-19. I know even the teachers do not know how to spell COVID-19, but it's COVID-19, capital O, capital C, capital O, capital V, capital I, capital D, dash 19. It's short for coronavirus. D might be disease. I'm not sure. If anybody knows, you can tell me. Coronavirus and 19, because it was first discovered in 2019. So it's been around for 2 years now, 19, 20, 21. So if you have a good title for your title page like that, then you'll know what will go in the middle of your title page. So your title page should have your title, and it should have the course code UU114, course name, English for academic purposes, not English for academic purpose. It should have your full name. Make sure the name is the same name that you enrolled at USP under. The name which is on your ID card should be the one which you are using for your report. Your ID number, make sure it's correct. Group number, even I know my group number now, it's group number 12. Tutor's name, make sure you get my name right. My name is Keith Giblin, capital K-E-I-T-H-G-I-B-L-I-N, capital letters. Your name should be in capitals. My name should be in capitals. At least have all of your punctuation correct on your title page. And the date for next Friday, which I believe is 20 plus Thursday, Friday, so 29th, 10th of the 29th, 29th of the of October 2021. That will be the date next Friday. So, as we saw last week, there are many parts to your report. The first page, title page. In the middle is your title. Next page, page II, is your executive summary. Executive summary is also the abstract. When it's a report, we call it an executive summary. So executive summary goes on page II. Table of contents. Table of contents. It's not table of content, it's table of contents, goes at the top. And all of the list is on the left-hand side, all numbered, and it has the page numbers on the right-hand side. So learn how to do your page numbers. If you do not know how, then you can look it up on YouTube to find how to number all of your pages. At the bottom of the page is the best place to put it. So learn how to do your page numbers. Table of contents. After that comes list of figures. All of the figures that you are putting inside your report. Figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4, figure 5, figure 6. And it should be labeled. I did some marking on this report by a student. He forgot to put the labels, the title for each of the figures. Title should be here and page number again. Do not include this in your table of contents. List of figures. The list of figures is separate from the table of contents. It has its own special page. After that, introduction. So I've suggested 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts to your introduction. So paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, paragraph 4, paragraph 5, paragraph 6. So this is part 1, paragraph 1.1. What is COVID-19? That can be your subtitle. What is COVID-19? 1 paragraph, 4 sentences. Do not make your paragraphs too short. Paragraphs can be long, no problem. Paragraphs should not be shorter than 4 sentences. What is COVID-19? You can easily find some information on COVID-19. Then you can make 1 paragraph, paragraph 1.1. What is COVID-19? Paragraph 1.2. The title can be, the subtitle can be COVID-19 in Fiji. This can be the subtitle for your second paragraph. The title is Introduction, subtitle COVID-19 in Fiji. Part 1.3, another 4 or more sentences. COVID-19 in your community. Choose your community. Which is your community? Hopefully you all know who you are going to give your 10 different questionnaires to. Is it your family? Is it your friends? Which group of friends? Are they your school friends from when you were in 7th form? Is it your rugby team? Is it your cultural team? Is it your prayer group? So you find a community. That name of the community will be in the title, on the title page, and COVID-19 in that community. So you will be generally talking about how many people in that community have been affected by COVID-19. So if you are talking about the residents of Nambua, then maybe who do you know about in Nambua, which has been affected by COVID-19? What did people have to do in Nambua? Did Nambua have to lock down, etc., etc.? So COVID-19 in that community. And the next paragraph might be introducing your community. Something about your community in general. If you are talking about your village, how many people live in the village? What do they do for an income? How many children, how many elderly people, where is the community? So if it's on a different island, maybe you have to talk about that island. If it's in Nausori, then you have to talk about Nausori town. How close is it to Nausori town? What kind of jobs do people do who live in that community? Where do they go to school? Where do they go to worship? Where do they go for their shopping, etc.? Part 1.5, hypothesis. Hypothesis can be one sentence. Hypothesis and title is hypothesis. What is your hypothesis? Your hypothesis is your main prediction. What do you think the outcome of this report is going to be? Maybe the people in your community agree very strongly that mandated strategies are very effective. Maybe you think this is what they're going to say. Before you interview them, before you give them your questionnaires, think about your hypothesis. Or maybe you think the people in this community do not believe very strongly in mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. So what do you think this community is going to say? What are they going to tell you? Make a prediction. Are they strongly agreeing with mandated strategies to counter COVID-19? Or are they going to strongly disagree with mandated strategies to counter COVID-19? And lastly, include the terms of reference. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Terms of reference is your subtitle, and part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5. You will find that on your task sheet. Copy and paste. Find out how knowledgeable people are about the effects of COVID-19. You are going to ask them the questions to find out what do they know about COVID-19. 2, to find out what mandated strategies government has put in place to counter COVID-19. So what do they know about government mandated strategies? 3, find out if people agree or disagree with the mandated strategies above. Do they agree or disagree with wearing masks? Do they agree or disagree with physical distancing? Do they agree or disagree with being quarantined? Do they agree or disagree with washing hands regularly? Do they agree or disagree with avoiding crowds? Do they agree or disagree with being vaccinated? So you have to ask them, do you agree with wearing masks? Do you agree with physical distancing? Do you agree with washing hands? Do you agree with avoiding crowds? Do you agree with being vaccinated? A very good question to ask is why. For everything, ask why. If you forgot to write it on your question paper, your questionnaire, still ask them why. Why do you think wearing masks is a good idea? Or why do you think wearing masks is a bad idea? Why do you think physical distancing is a good idea? Why do you think it's a bad idea? Why do you think being quarantined is a good idea or a bad idea? Depending on the answers they give. Why do you think washing hands regularly is a good idea or not a good idea? Why do you think avoiding crowds is a good idea or not a good idea? Why do you think being vaccinated is a good idea or not a good idea? Yes.
So do you have to put that in the terms of reference?
You have to, for your terms of reference, just copy and paste your terms of reference into the introduction. Copy and paste from your task sheet. So go to your task sheet on Moodle, copy and paste. 1, 2,
So
3.
where can you find the task sheet? So I was looking for it today.
Pardon?
So I was looking for the task sheet today. I couldn't find it.
So you
Where
go,
do we?
it's the name of the assignment. The assignment sheet.
Oh, okay.
Just go to the assignment sheet, the assignment task sheet, copy and paste 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and put it in your introduction.
Okay. So,
The introduction, that's the most important part of your introduction. When you write an essay, The most important sentence is your thesis statement. What are your main ideas? When you write a report, you include your terms of reference, TOR, terms of reference. What are the things you have to find out when you are writing your report? Make sure it's in your terms of reference. Make sure that your, what is the word? The word is hypothesis. Make sure your hypothesis is in the report. And then you can introduce COVID, you can introduce COVID in PG, you can introduce COVID in the community, you can introduce your community generally. So 4 sentences for each minimum. If you do that, you are doing very well. So these are all the things that you should have in your report. Title page, executive summary, table of contents, list of figures, introduction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 parts. Hypothesis is not a paragraph. Hypothesis can be 1 or 2 sentences. Terms of reference is just copy and paste. So 4 paragraphs plus hypothesis plus terms of reference. After that, we come to the methods. Methods can include procedure. What did you do? 4 sentences. First of all, do not say, I made a questionnaire. No, no, no. We are using academic English. A questionnaire was prepared and distributed to members of the community to collect more information on opinions about mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. The questionnaires were distributed to 10 or 5 females and 5 males within the age group of, they were given how many hours to answer the questions and return the questionnaires back. So what did you do? Procedure. Questionnaire can be part 2. 2.1 is procedure. 2.2, questionnaire. What kind of questions did you include? The questionnaire focused mainly on how much people knew about effects of COVID-19. Also to find out what strategies government has put in place to counter COVID-19. To find if people agree or disagree with strategies such as wearing masks, social distancing, being quarantined, washing hands, avoiding crowds, and being vaccinated. And recommendations were also asked from them for the future. So, methods. What did you do in the making of this report? So maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs for methods. Results, you are including your graphs, charts, photos, maps, any other diagrams you want to include, you can put it here. If you find some information on how COVID-19 affects the lungs, you can include that. Statistics for people who have got sick in Fiji or in the world or in the community or in Suva. You can include them here if you want to discuss them. For each of your figures, you will be writing 1 paragraph. Do not write a paragraph in the results. Only show the most important trend. So this one was about frequency of plastic usage. Figure 1.0 illustrates the frequency with which the community used plastics, and it shows that the main bar was frequently, showed that the community used plastics frequently. Only the most important things should be included, 1 sentence only, as well as the title, and the X and Y axes should be labeled. So do not write your discussion here. Discussion goes in the discussion. Only do the bars, graphs, charts, tables. Maybe 5, 6 pie charts, bar graphs, etc. Only one sentence underneath, one caption. Include the title, include your keys. So that's what goes in the results. In the discussion, that's the place where you have one paragraph each on each of your figures. If you have a lot of figures, then you write less, because this is supposed to be 1,000-word report. If you have less figures, then probably you will have one paragraph each. So 4 sentences minimum on each. Figure 1.1, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. So I'll be looking to see, did you write about figure 1? Did you write about figure 2? Did you write about figure 3? Did you write about figure 4? Did you write about figure 5? Everything you want to discuss should be included in the results. And the discussion is one paragraph each. And then finally, we move to the conclusion. Conclusion does not have to be too long. Was your hypothesis correct or incorrect? How successful was your report? Maybe you had not enough time. Maybe some people were not willing to answer the questionnaire. Maybe you needed some money and you did not have some funding for that. Maybe you would have worked better if you had more people or people to help you, etc. How successful was your report? So this can all go in your conclusion. Then recommendations. Recommendations, point form, not paragraph form. What recommendations can you find? Recommendations on ways the community can best protect themselves from COVID-19. What can they do? Recommendations can be included. So try to write some full sentences for your recommendations. So I can give you 4 out of 4 for your recommendations. If it's too brief, I cannot give you 4 out of 4. After that, bibliography. Bibliography, Harvard style. So you have your surname, alphabetical order. See indoors the cheeky big. Surname, initial, date, title, and place of publication. If it's all online, then include your URLs here. All of your internet addresses should be here. Appendix should include 1 copy of your questionnaire, unfilled. 1 copy of your questionnaire, and anything else you want to include, you do not know where else to put it, you can include it in your appendix. Any questions?
So can you explain again the bibliography part? I didn't really catch it.
Can you repeat that question, Joelle, please?
Can you explain the bibliography again?
Bibliography, the same as for your essay. So see indoors the cheeky pig, surname, initial, D is date, T is title, T, title, company, and place. So if you have forgotten how to do your bibliography, go back to Unit 2 in your book. It explains to you the bibliography is on page number. Let me check in my own book. Bibliography. Bibliography, page 2.46. Page 2.46 in your textbook. If you have forgotten how to write the bibliography, it's on page 2.46 in the textbook, which is in Moodle. So you have to find page 2.46, and it will show you again how to write your bibliography. Any questions regarding the report before we move on?
Somebody was saying to explain again in the introduction.
Introduction.
Natalie.
Introduction. So 4 paragraphs in the introduction. Paragraph 1.1, what is COVID-19? General. What is COVID-19? So if you have done your essay already, maybe you can use some of the points from your essay to include. 1 paragraph, what is COVID-19? Paragraph 1.2, COVID-19 in Fiji. So what has happened in Fiji? Find some information. 4 sentences might be enough. Paragraph 1.3, COVID-19 and your community. How have the people in your community been affected by COVID-19? So the subtitle can be COVID-19 in the community. Paragraph 1.4, introduce your community. So if it's students of Mahatma Gandhi Memorial School, how many students are in Mahatma Gandhi Memorial School? When was Mahatma Gandhi Memorial School founded? What is famous? What makes Mahatma Gandhi Memorial School famous? Where is it located? So introduce your community. If your community is residents of Nausori village, then where is Nausori village? How come Nausori village is interesting, different, unusual? How many people live there? How do they earn their money? Where do they go to school? Where do they go to work? Where do they go to church? Where is their hospital? So you can talk about your community. If it's your kava drinking group, then what kind of people join your kava drinking group every Friday night? Who goes there? So how come you know each other? How long has this kava drinking group been going? What is the history of your kava drinking group? So something about your community, the people who you want to ask. Your family, who is in your family? What kind of people are in your family? Who is the head of the family? How many are working? How many are studying? Where do you all live? So talking about your family. So if it's me, I would say that my family is a part European family. My European ancestor came to Fiji in 1881 and settled in Draketi and made a cotton plantation there. He married with a Fijian lady from wherever it was, and they produced many children. So, and then I'll talk maybe about my Fijian family and my Indian family and my Chinese family, as we are all in Fiji and we're all intermixed, and all of those kinds of different people, and what we are doing, how many of us are still in Fiji, how many are overseas now. So all of those kinds of things you can include when you are talking about your community. If you are talking, yes, Mary Sammy.
Can you repeat the recommendation?
Recommendations, point form. So on the task you are given, make recommendations on ways the community will best protect itself from COVID-19. So on your task sheet, on your questionnaire, you should be asking people, what recommendations can you make in order to protect yourself from COVID-19? So maybe some of the recommendations are wearing masks. Maybe some of the recommendations are social distancing. Maybe the people in that community are not wearing masks enough. Maybe they are not physical distancing enough, being quarantined, etc. How can they quarantine themselves or stay away from different people? Maybe they are socializing too much. Maybe they should not go to have religious services or to have family meetings.
So the recommendations have been paid for.
Yes, point form, but try to have some full sentences. So recommendations, try not to make them too short. Try to have maybe 2 sentences. Maybe you can have 1, 2, 3, 4 recommendations. 4 can be enough, but 2 sentences for each. What can this community do to keep itself safe? So if somebody in the community is feeling unwell, what can they do? Maybe they're going to work instead of staying home. Maybe they're going to socialize instead of staying home. Maybe they should think about where they're going shopping. Maybe they should think about where they are working. Maybe they should think about who's coming to the house. So what recommendations can they do to keep themselves safe? Depending on your community, what can the community do? If there are people staying at USP, what can you do if you are staying in the halls at USP? What recommendations can you recommend for students in order to keep themselves safe from COVID-19? So recommendations, what can be done?
Oh, sir.
Hmm.
Is that a recommendation of the people we handing out the questionnaires to, or our recommendation?
Both. So if they don't give enough recommendations, you can ask them, maybe they can give you some good ideas. So from your own observation, from your own reading, from your own research, and from asking them. So what can be done for that community? Anything that they say, anything you say that will be helpful for that community. You are making this report, maybe as a member of the health team or the government. So you are just looking for ideas to include in your report. These are very good questions. I'm very glad you're asking me these questions.
Sir, do we have to write abstract?
Abstract is called, what is the abstract called? The abstract is called the executive summary. So abstract is executive summary. So that is 1 sentence, which is your introduction. 1 sentence only. 1 sentence, which is methods. What did you do for your methods? 1 sentence for results. So results, results included graphs, charts, diagrams. What did you include for your results? 1 good sentence for discussion. So what did you find out from your results? All of those different figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4, figure 5, try to make 1 sentence only. That might be your hypothesis. That might be your discussion. And then your conclusion, what did you find out at the end? Most important thing that you found out. So that will be your executive summary. 1 sentence, introduction. 1 sentence, methods. 1 sentence, results. 1 sentence, discussion. 1 sentence, conclusion. And last sentence, don't forget, recommendations will be made. This is a recommendation report. So recommendations will be made. If you forget to write recommendations will be made, I cannot give you 4 out of 4 for your executive summary. Executive summary is abstract. When you write an essay, it's called an abstract. When you write a report, it's called an executive summary because it summarizes everything which is in the report. Introduction, 1 sentence. Methods, 1 sentence. Results, 1 sentence. Discussion, 1 sentence. Conclusion, 1 sentence. Recommendations will be made. Understand, Michael? Any more questions there?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Good question.
Sir,
Yes, Amenio.
for those parts of the report, sir, like introduction, methods, and discussion and thing,
Hmm.
do they need to have like 1 paragraph each, or 2 or 3 like that?
So, executive summary, 1 paragraph. Introduction, 4 paragraphs, right? One is, what is COVID-19? Paragraph 2, COVID-19 in Fiji. Paragraph 3, COVID-19 in your community. Paragraph 1.4, introduce your community. Paragraph, 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 paragraph. Hypothesis, after that, maybe 1 or 2 sentences. What is your hypothesis? After that, terms of reference, copy and paste from your task sheet. That means from your assignment 2 sheet. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Copy and paste. Copy and paste. Do you understand, Arminio?
What's
Sir,
Appendices?
Yes, Michael.
for question 4, you said we have to evaluate question 4, yeah? But where do we evaluate it, in the discussion or the conclusion?
Evaluate people's reasons on why they agree or disagree with the strategies.
Yeah,
I'd say in the conclusion might be the best place.
conclusion is the best place.
Yes,
Okay, sir, thanks, sir.
conclusion. Any more questions?
So, what's the term of references?
Terms of references, that is in the question. So
Hey, man, you're right.
got it? Good. Okay, good. At least you're asking me. Very good. All right. So I will repeat a lot of what I said last time, because it's good for you to understand very carefully what we are doing. We write reports for many purposes, outside university, in your job, whatever your job, probably you have to write reports. Teachers write reports, engineers write reports, doctors write reports. If you are working in commerce, you will be writing reports. Sciences write reports. Reports are very particular. It's a format which you can learn, but it's different from essay writing. So we looked at this last time. We are writing our recommendational reports. Make recommendations for future action based on the research, the analysis, and the conclusions. So recommendational reports include information. You will be including information, and you will be analyzing the information. So you will be including your information in the form of graphs, charts, diagrams, etc. You will be analyzing the information in the form of writing paragraphs in the discussion. And then you will be making recommendations. It's a recommendational report, so you have to include recommendations. They are an important part of this report. Maybe your manager will tell you, I need a recommendational report, so you have to know how to come up with some recommendations. So this is your data, this is a table, this can be in your results, and then in your discussion, you write all of these sentences from your data. When you have a recommendational report, you have the 1, 2, 3, 4 different terms of references here. This is a very short example of a report. In your abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. The most important part of the report: introduction, methods, results, discussion. So when you do your executive summary, 1 sentence, what are you doing in your report? This report is based on the Methodist Youth Fellowship of Rawanga Methodist Church on their opinions about mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. That is enough for introduction. Methods. So what methods did you use? A questionnaire was prepared, and given out to 10 members of the group in order to find their opinions. Also, as well as research from the library and further information online. Results included bar graphs, pie charts, a map, and a diagram. So that might be for your results. Discussion. What was the most important thing that you found out from your results? One sentence only, one good sentence. Conclusion. What is the most important sentence in your conclusion? Then recommendations, not included in your term of reference. Only recommendations will be made. So don't forget, on the title page, a study of members of, a study of ex-students of Suva Muslim College, studying at University of the South Pacific, to find their opinions about mandated strategies to counter COVID-19. So that should be your title. Don't forget your name, ID number, course number, name, my name, and the date. Title page should look very professional, something like this. Your name can be there. Executive summary included. Table of contents. Part 1, introduction. 1.1, what is COVID-19? 1.2, COVID-19 in Fiji. 1.3, COVID-19 in the community. 1.4, introducing the community. 1.5, hypothesis. 1.6, terms of reference. Then we move on to 2. Part 2 will be, what is part 2? Part 2 is, part 2 is methods. Methods or methodology. Part 2, methods. Part 2.1, procedure. Part 2.2, questionnaire. Part 2.3 might be subjects. Who did you decide to give the questionnaire to? Table of contents. So abstract is page I. Abstract or executive summary. Executive summary sounds better than abstract. You can put abstract, no problem. But executive summary is a better title for abstract. Acknowledgements, if you want to acknowledge anybody, this can be a place where you can include personal language. If you want to thank members of your community, or thank your parents, or thank anybody else, you can include it here. Table of contents, III. List of figures, IV. Then we come to the introduction, all the different parts of the introduction listed here. Introduction is part 1. Part 2 will be methods. Part 3 will be results. Part 4 will be discussion. Part 5 will be, after discussion comes conclusion. Part 6 will be recommendations. Part 7 will be, there's no part 7. So bibliography is there and appendices will be there. You do not have a glossary for this report, but page numbers should be like this. All of the headings and subheadings all should be numbered. So they are very easy to find.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Anushka.
So for the results, we'll just write 3.0 results. We won't write like 3.1 figure 1, 3.2 figure 2, no.
You will have results. It's not necessary, but you can. So in a report, it's good to have as many subheadings as you can. If you don't do it, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
It's up to you. So list of figures figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, figure 4, figure 5, figure 6, all should have titles, all should have page numbers. However you want to label your figures and whatever kind of figures you want to include. In your introduction, purpose of the research. So why are you writing this report? Background of the research, something about COVID, something about your community, something about COVID in Fiji. Hypothesis should be there. And don't forget, seeing as this is an analytical report, well, terms of reference should be there. Example is here, terms of reference. Terms of reference are the specific tasks which the researcher must carry out. These are the things you are looking to find. These are often the primary objectives of the research. So a short summary of the research methods used, short discussion. So just include the terms of research, they should be there. Methods. So if you want, you can have one paragraph on subjects, one on materials, one on procedure. Subjects are people. Usually when we talk about and his subjects. So we are not talking about maths, English. What subjects are you studying? No, different meaning. Subjects can also be people. The subjects are the people you are going to subject your questionnaire to. You are going to give them your questionnaire. So if you want to write paragraph 3.1 on subjects, that means people. Who was involved? Who are the people? Subjects, sometimes students get confused with this word. In this case, the subjects are the people you are going to choose. You are targeting these people. Who did you involve in your research? Why did you choose them? Gender, age groups, what they had to do, why did you choose them? Maybe you chose them because they are the easiest people for you to interview. Maybe they are the people who are living with you. You can include that in your paragraph if you want to. If they are your online friends, maybe you chose them because you know that they will give you honest answers and they will give you interesting answers. Maybe they are very intelligent people just like you, and so you will be able to have a very interesting discussion, very good report based on your friends who are your Facebook friends, maybe. So subjects are people, people, not subjects you study at school. Subjects are people. Materials, what materials did you use? So questionnaires. Maybe you ask some extra questions. Maybe you ask some people for an interview. Any extra questions you asked can be interviews. If people are telling you interesting information, ask some more questions. You can interview them. Maybe you can use your phone and record them so you don't forget what they say, or you can write it down. So interviews. What kinds of questions did you ask? So in materials, this can be questionnaires. What kinds of questions did you ask in your questionnaire? Why did you ask these questions? And
So,
yes.
for the questionnaires, can we print it out or lecture online?
Yes. If you want to give it to somebody, you can print it out. Nope. Yes, it's up to you how you want to interview people. Face-to-face interview,
Okay.
you should print it out. Or if you just want to do it online, send it online, it's up to you. So make a questionnaire and give me one copy of the questionnaire. Send me one copy of the questionnaire, but it's up to you. Maybe you are only interviewing online. So maybe you want to interview your friends overseas. If you are you from China, Michael?
Yes, sir.
So maybe you are interviewing Chinese community in your city in China. That would be very interesting. Then you have to send it by you'll have to send it by email or however you want to send it. So if you want to, you can all send it to different countries. It's up to you. If you have friends in many countries, then you can send it to different countries to see how people answer. So, but
So
if you, yes.
can we email the tutors like you?
Well, who is your community?
Namandi.
If I'm part of your community, then maybe you can interview me. But I
It's
prefer
Namandi Aitse.
yes, I prefer you. Actually, I prefer you not to interview me because sometimes a lot of students interview me, and I think it's better if you send it to somebody else because that way I can be impartial. So maybe
Okay, sir.
yes, don't include me. I'm the one who has to mark your work. So maybe you can ask some of the other tutors if you want to. If you want to make your tutors your or lecturers your community, you can include them or people at USP. But I think it's better if you do not include me in your questionnaire. Good question, but I prefer to be the one who marks your work, but not the one to be a subject in your work. So materials, procedure, what did you do? So you can give the date, step-by-step account. Scientific, if you looked online, what were you looking for online? If you were looking for information for your essay and you found that the same information was useful for your report, you can include that in your paragraph. So what did you do? Did you interview anybody as well as give questionnaires? Maybe you wanted to interview a doctor. Maybe you wanted to interview somebody from the government, from the health department. So anything that you did, you can include. So 2 or 3 paragraphs. Remember, a paragraph should be about 4 sentences. Something about the people, the subjects, something about materials, something about what did you do. That is procedure. And this is under methods or methodology. Methods. So methods, subjects is one method. Materials is one method. So don't forget S. Note the plural. Methods. It's always in the plural. What methods did you use? Don't forget S. And here is an example of methods. Questionnaire. So you can, I don't want to say copy this, but look at this. See how they wrote these sentences? You can write your sentences similarly. Everybody writes reports the same ways. So your report, your sentences will be very similar to everybody else's. So you will see that the Turnitin percentage will be high. And then I will be opening and checking, can I accept the sentence? Usually I can accept the sentence because most people write their reports in one particular way with one particular kind of sentences. There's one style for writing reports. So you can use these kinds of sentences. Make sure your report is not the same as somebody else's report, but your sentences can look like this. So there are some sentences about your questionnaire here. You can use them. You can adapt them for your own report. The student interviewed some people, so you can note the numbering. Students 2.2.1, manageress 2.2.2, and somebody from the ministry of somewhere 2.2.3. So numbering can be even longer than 2.2. It can include different kinds of numbers for different paragraphs. We looked at this last time. Think of everything you can ask people which makes them different from other people. Gender, do men think differently from women? Marital status, do single people think differently from married people? Age, do people of different age think differently? Residence, do people in different places think differently from each other? Do people in VT level think differently from people in Vanua level? If you are interviewing students at USP, maybe you will be able to see some differences. People in different countries, if you are friends with people from different countries. Urban, rural, maybe different religions. You can ask them, how do they feel? We went over this last time. So you can ask people, what is your religion if you want to? People who have money as opposed to people who do not have a lot of money. So you can ask people, what is your job? What is your occupation? And you can work out if they have a lot of money, do they think differently about COVID and the community as opposed to people who think differently? Try to think widely. There are many different aspects to discuss. So the more differences you can find, the more graphs you can use, the more pie charts you can use. Old people, children, what do they think? Young adults, middle age, and youth. These can all have their own category. If you are interviewing students at USP, people from different disciplines, do the engineering students think differently from the science students? Do undergraduates think differently from people doing their masters? Do teachers think differently from students? So when you do your questionnaire, married, single, male, female, age, try to think of how you can ask questions so you can help them to think. Give some lines for them to write some answers. Make sure you arrange with them how to do it. If you are giving the questionnaire out in hard copy, make sure you ask for them to give it back. And what time will they give it back? Maybe you have to sit with them, help them, explain to them. And all of this you can include in your procedure. What did you have to do in order to get your community to answer the questions on the questionnaire? Maybe some people cannot read. Maybe you have to tell them. Maybe you have to explain in a different language. So all of that is your procedure. You can include that in your procedure. Remember, minimum of 10, 5 or 6 are not enough, because the more people you have, the more you can find facts or things which reflect that community. The less people you ask, the less you'll be able to have a true reflection on the community. If you interview 10 people, getting percentages will be very easy. If you interview 12 people, then you can divide by 2, you can divide by 3. It's very easy to make graphs and charts, etc., using 10 or 12 people. 11 people, not so easy. Results, have your figure, number, have your title, have your key, and very short explanation. What is the most important thing you can find in this figure? Maybe the most important thing is that results were all similar except for the East section, which in the third quarter rose to 90. So just one point, you can make the point about this bar, because this bar is different from all of the other ones. So just include one main point in your conclusion. When you go to your discussion, that is the time when you can include all of your information. You can write in detail. What are the figures showing? What are the figures suggesting? What do they illustrate? So if you have 5 or 6 figures, 1 paragraph each, what are the figures showing? Explain in detail. What are they suggesting? What is the trend that is happening? What will happen in future according to the way that the figures, the data is being shown? What is suggested and what do they show? Remember, avoid emotional language. I know most of you know that your language should be formal. Unfortunately, when you wrote your essays, some of you forgot. You use personal language. Do not use I, do not use we. You can use they, talking about your community. Do not use slang. Do not use contractions. Do not use questions in your text. Write in the past tense, except for the things that are true. Write in full sentences and in full paragraphs. Bullet points can only be used for your recommendations. Conclusion in a research report are often detailed. You can have a broad range of conclusions, but this conclusion, not so long. Sometimes 4 or 6 sentences is enough. And in your conclusion, what was the most important thing that you found in your report? So it might be the same thing as your hypothesis. What did your hypothesis found? How successful was your hypothesis? You can include sentences like this. This report is not conclusive as it lacks validity and reliability. So maybe you were unsure because you only gave your questionnaire to 10 people. If everybody in the community thinks this way, if you are only giving your questionnaire to 10 people, maybe it's not so reliable. Maybe it's not so valid. Maybe you are not sure that your findings are going to be very useful. Therefore, no firm generalization or assumption can be made about cultural differences in defining intelligence. So your sentences can look something like this. Further research is required in order to provide any trends in defining intelligence in cultural context. So sentences can be like this. However, the research has revealed that whatever you found, the variety of these categories does contain an element of cultural perspective. So whatever you find, your sentences can look something like this. Recommendations. These are not found in scientific reports. If you are asked to provide recommendations, if you are not asked to provide recommendations, do not write them, but you are asked to write recommendations. So you should make sure they are relevant and grow out of what has been discussed in the report. Keep the language simple, neutral. The following recommendations are suggested. And then bullet point form. This is very brief bullet point forms. The following recommendations are suggested. 1, 2, 3, 4. So for some reports, they can be this short. Bibliography, you should include a complete bibliography, just as you did for your essay. Refer to the work you have already done in writing a bibliography. You do not need to include anyone who was given a questionnaire, but you can include people who you have interviewed. So if you interviewed a police officer 2021 interview. What day did you interview the police officer? If you know any policemen, it's very interesting to find out what experiences they have, especially if they're community officers working with your community and dealing with people and restrictions. If you want to talk to somebody in government, what is their position? Interview and 23rd April, whatever the date was. Appendices is the plural form of appendix. The appendix is the place to put any statistical data that does not fit easily anywhere else in the report. For examples of the questionnaire or interview questions. These do not belong in the body of the report, but they are useful to show what kind of questions were asked as the basis for your research. Do not include filled-in questionnaires, just a blank example. When you are writing a report, language should be simple and to the point. You want to communicate with people efficiently and effectively. So it's different from an essay. In an essay, you are trying to persuade people to agree or disagree with a point of view. But in a report, you are giving the facts and then you are reaching conclusions based on those facts. This is not the place to try out long words that you have been experimenting with. So use data for COVID. You're talking about COVID, so you can use medical terms if you want to talk about COVID, or you can use law terms if you're talking about the law, words that the government uses, etc. So whatever words are to do with your report, those are the technical terms that you should use. Authors of reports frequently use hedging language. Some of you, when you wrote your essays, were writing everything as though it was a fact. If you do not know it's a fact, or if you think it's a fact, be very careful and make sure you show proof that it's a fact. Otherwise, you can say tend to be, possibly, seem to be. So those are hedging words. Hedging words, if you are not exactly sure, results are not always certain or likely to be repeated. So the work may be only suggesting possible trends or possible implications. So unless you are very sure, use hedging words just as you do for your essays. So this book is encouraging you. What is your plan in order to finish your report, decide on your topic, finish your research, design your questionnaires, hand out 10 questionnaires, collect in your questionnaires, complete whatever interviews you want to do if you want to do interviews, and then write up your report, rough draft, final draft, due date. Due date is next Friday, so 29th of October. If you want to interview people, then maybe make some appointments. If they are very busy people or if they are very important people, you can have interview questions prepared beforehand, which will help you get started. But you can also ask unprepared questions if you think of something while you are talking and giving out your questionnaire. Always remember, say thank you to your interviewee for his or her time. If they decline to answer questions, don't argue, just say thank you, no problem, and go and interview somebody else. If you are working with other students, it's a good idea to go at the same time, so you do not take up too much of a person's time. But be professional. If you are working with professional people, if you are interviewing professional people, try to make your interview time first. When you hand out questionnaires, remember to set a time to collect them, or ask the person if he or she can fill out the questionnaire while you are waiting and talking to them. When you are writing, keep it simple. Best language is language which can be read and understood quickly. Reports are often read by very busy people. You do not have to worry about cohesive devices. Firstly, however, furthermore, you do not need those words, because in a report, it is normal to use subheadings. If you have subheadings, then you know the flow of the paragraphs. Check all the time that you are meeting the terms of reference. The terms of reference are the 5 things that you are looking for information on. Do what they expect you to do and do not do anything more than that. Reports usually do not set word limits, but they do expect you to do what was asked in appropriate detail. Make sure you hand in the work on time. When you are writing reports for future, employers will set you a date and expect you to keep that date, and so will your university lecturers. So this is an example of What is it called? It's called your table of contents. Yes, table of contents with numbering. This is your list of figures. All right, so this is an example of a report. Example of a bibliography. And so that is that for Unit 10, I think.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. All right. So it's only 7:30. So we will go and look at Unit 9. Unit 9 is to do with your results. And all of this is revision from what you learned in primary school and in secondary school. So what are you going to put in your results? So let me look for Unit 9. Seven. If I go too far, then I will miss it. Is this? No, that's coming after this. Unit 9. Okay, Unit 9. So using visual texts. So usually when we think of texts, we think of words, making texts, writing texts, text me, send me an email, send me a text. So visual texts can include graphs, tables, maps, diagrams. Graphs can include line graphs, bar graphs, or pie graphs. In this book, they are called pie graphs. When I went to school, they were called pie charts. I'm not sure what you call them, but it's either a graph or a bar. Visual texts. So sometimes you draw them. If you cannot find a good map of your village or a good map of a street of people that you are interviewing, maybe you have to draw it and then load it. So what can you include in your results? Visual texts. Visual texts are those which use pictures or some form of diagram. They are common in university texts because data is usually complex, and visuals can help to explain the intricacies of such things as machines, body organs, if you are studying medicine, comparative data, and so on. Engineers, what's inside various mechanical engines, what's inside a computer. Maybe a diagram will help you in order to understand better. When you have a report, you can also include diagrams. Reading visual texts. There are three main types of graphs: line graphs, bar graphs, pie graphs. All of this you will know from school, hopefully. I'm sure all school teachers teach this in the maths department, and maybe even at primary school you learn some of these things. All graphs have certain things in common. They display numerical information, numbers, in a visual form. They have axes, one axis, x-axis, and y-axis, two axes, or a key. to help explain what the parts mean. So when you include your figures, make sure you have axes and a key. They have clearly labeled sections and a clear, precise title, and they are neatly prepared and neatly framed. So you'll be doing all of this using a computer. Hopefully you have enough knowledge about computers in order to do this very well. Line graphs, they have two axes, a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. The vertical axis goes up and down. The horizontal line runs from side to side. It's good to know all these terms because you might want to discuss, as shown in the x-axis or the y-axis, as shown in the vertical axis. Don't forget title of axis x, title of axis y, title of the graph. The vertical axis is usually numbers, thousands, millions, percentages, and so on, in even and equal distributions. If the divisions are not equal, the meaning of the data will be distorted and changed, and would therefore not be valid. The horizontal axis normally provides division of time in days, months, years, decades, etc. Both axes must be labeled. Otherwise, we would have no idea what the data or the information means. So sometimes the figure is enough. It shows you exactly without having to read in the discussion. The discussion will discuss what it shows, what the trends will be, but you should be able to look at the figures and see exactly what the information is. Both axes must be labeled, or else we would not know what they are talking about. They show trends. The line or graph shows trends or developments over time. The line of the graph moves across the space. So all of this is vocabulary that will be helping you when you write your discussion. You can read a line graph, or you can interpret a line graph. The title, what is the graph about? The axes, what is the numerical data representing? Dollars, units, years, months, decades. What is the horizontal axis describing? Days, months, years, decades. The line or lines. Sometimes there's more than one line. How many different lines are there? Line graphs can have more than one lot of data so that figures can be compared. Is the line or are the lines steady? Or does it fluctuate? These are very good words for your English vocabulary in order for you to use them in reports, etc. Fluctuating, going up and down. You may have to use a ruler to check the exact position of points on the line. Note trends. What is the trend? The trend is the overall development, usually an increase or a decrease in something. Figures may fluctuate or bounce. We can use this word too. Fluctuate or bounce up and down. And their general direction may not be clear. So when COVID first came to Fiji, what was the trend? Or they may fluctuate, but still move generally up or generally down. We can describe this as a trend. A trend can be pronounced or steep. This means it is rising or falling very fast. If the line moves up or down without much fluctuation, we can say this is a steady rise or fall. Rising steadily or falling steadily. So we have an example here of a line graph. What is this graph telling us? So we have to read this information and we will see, what is this graph telling us? This graph is telling us the production of minerals, the production and use of minerals over 40 years in the USA, I believe. So we can see one line going very quickly up, rising very fast. World production of minerals, iron, what other minerals are there? Maybe diamonds, gold, etc. Are they kinds of minerals? I believe they are. US consumption, US production. So we can see that production is similar to consumption in the US, but some of the minerals must be brought in. What is this graph telling us? It is telling us production of minerals and the use of minerals over 40 years, from 1930 to 1990. How much data is being compared? World production, US production, and US consumption. So these things are being compared. What was the US mineral production in 1940? 1940, what was US production in 1940? So maybe that is 0.1, maybe 0.1%. What was US production in 1975? 1975, US production, 0.2. What was US consumption in 1970? 1970, consumption, maybe 3.3. What is the US trend in consumption? US trend in consumption is a steady rise, a steady rise. What has been the trend in world mineral production since 1945? We can say this is a very dramatic rise, rising very, very fast since maybe 1945. So these are ways of writing about a figure. When you write about your figures, you will need to include these kinds of sentences, this kind of information. That is a line graph. This is a bar graph. Bar graphs, like a line graph, a bar graph has two axes, but the axes may present varied data. If the bar graph is vertical, the vertical axis will still give numerical data, millions of tons, tens of thousands of dollars, etc. But the horizontal axis, may contain several columns or bars, each representing a different category of facts. In this way, categories of related data can be compared. Different exports, or towns, or age groups, or people. If the graph is horizontal, the axes are reversed, and the horizontal one has the numbers. So the bars can be horizontal or the bars can be vertical. In this form of presentation, the values are shown on the horizontal, the values are shown on the vertical axis, and the categories on the horizontal axis. So these are the activities. The bar or bars should be of suitable width to provide a balanced visual effect, have heights equal to the value. For clarity of presentation, spaces are left between the categories, and the actual values are shown at the top of each bar. So a bar chart can also be presented in horizontal form. The choice is for the researcher. You should use the format which appeals most from a visual point of view. So whichever one you think is best for you, you can use. So visual or horizontal, and usually there's a gap left in between. So traveling, sleeping, fishing, these are the people who live on Amauku. It's an island. So they spend a lot of time traveling, they spend a lot of time sleeping, they spend a lot of time fishing. Usually they are fishermen, so they have to spend a lot of time traveling to get to the place where all the fishes are. So this is the same information presented both visually and horizontally. This kind of bar graph is displaying data that can be compared between bars. Data can be presented in such a way that allows you to compare data within bars. These are called stacked bars. So down here, stacked. Males are dark, females are light. These are very useful because they show double the amount of information. So you can stack them. So days absent from work through illness during the previous year, 30 employees. So most people took 3 to 5 days, but usually males took 0 to 2 or 3 to 5. Females took 3 to 5 or 6 to 8. Sometimes overall females took less time off than males. So you can see double the information by looking at the graphs. Another kind of bar graph is a histogram. Histogram has all of the bars joined together. There's no space in between. In a histogram, the information is not separate but closely related. The columns are not separate but touch because the same information is being represented but for different subjects. In this histogram, the topic is still the numbers of days absent from work, but the data is from a sample of 6 employees in different age groups. So age 16 to 25 took most of the days off. 25 to 36 less. 36 to 45 the least. 46 to 55 second highest. And 56 to 65 maybe the third highest. Age groups may be different, but in each case, the same sample technique has been used, but information is closely related. In order to interpret or to read a bar graph, what do you have to pay attention to? What is the graph about? So you have one sentence here. Title, axes, bars. What is the graph showing? What is the graph showing? If the statements are okay, so this is an exercise. Pie graph. I'm sure most of you know how to do a pie graph. Very easy for you. If you've forgotten, here it is in the course book. This type of graph is called a pie graph because it looks like a pie cut up for serving. Here is a pie. A pie graph is round and has divisions depending on the data displayed. The whole circle equals 100%, and the sections represent the appropriate percentages that the information is divided into. They must all add up to 100. Or if you are interviewing 10 people, it's easy to get your percentages. The data is designed for readers to make easy and effective comparisons between the pieces of information. Sometimes the percentages are written next to each section, but often they are not. And then you have to make some judgments about the comparisons. So if you look at this pie graph, it's got percentages inside the slices of the pie, and then 2 are outside because the percentages are too small. In this case, you cannot use exact numbers, but must use hedging language. It appears that some things are more larger, more popular than. So if you do not know the exact numbers, then you have to use hedging language. Sometimes each section is labeled. Sometimes each section is colored and shaded. And then there may be a key which tells what each color or shade means. So if you are using pie graphs or pie charts, try to use some color so that it's very easy to read when you are doing your report. If percentages are given, they may give you very precise information. Sometimes they'll be taken to the nearest whole number. They are there to help you make comparisons. Very small numbers are usually grouped together to make a category called other. Not others, but other. So when you write your questionnaire, other, no S. One category called other. Look at the graph below. Distribution of population. Australia. Highest number of people are in New South Wales. New South Wales includes Sydney. Second largest, Victoria. Third largest, Queensland. South Australia, Western Australia, the same proportion. Tasmania, that's the island at the bottom of Australia, 3%. And Northern Territory and Australian Capital Territory, even though they are the largest states in Australia, they have the smallest amount of population. This is because Australia has a lot of desert, and so these places are not easy for people to live in. So this graph, like other graphs, cannot suggest why facts are the way they are. They only give us the facts, not the explanations. The graph cannot suggest why the population distribution is the way it is. We may know that the Northern Territory is hot and dry, or that New South Wales has a pleasant climate, but that information is not given by the graph. So do not assume information that the graph does not provide. So if you want to say why, then you have to suggest it and use hedging language to suggest. Tables. Graphs have to generalize data to a large degree in order to put the information in a visual form. This means that the figures cannot be as precise as going for decimal points. Even if a graph gives you the percentages in a pie graph, the figures will normally be to the nearest whole number. But tables can give exact numerical data, right down to decimal points. Tables are not as visually attractive and interesting as graphs, but they can bring interesting and useful data together so that you can compare important figures. Tables can have as many columns as there is separate information. One column usually deals with some form of time, months, years, decades, so that the data can be compared over those times, because tables, like other forms of visual presentations, let us see change. However, you can only deal with the information in front of you. You cannot imagine reasons unless you have other information as evidence. So don't forget titles of each column, and the figures themselves. So this is a table. Months of the year, January to December. Percentages, average temperature in Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina. Argentina, average number of rainy days. Geneva, the capital of Switzerland. Switzerland, average number of rainy days. So we can compare by looking at the columns. So we are not going to look at the columns, but you will be able to tell what the amount of rainy days are for each month, which month is the most rainy, which month is the coldest, which one is the warmest month in Buenos Aires, which month is the warmest month in Geneva. And then from there you can really generalize that in winter for both places it rains more and summers are normally drier. Maps. If you want to, you can include maps. So what can we say about maps? Maps are pictorial representations of land or oceans or stars or planets and so on. So you can include maps of your communities. They can include very wide-ranging maps of the world, etc., they can be very focused to include rivers, etc. So if you're talking about people with COVID in a community, then maybe you can give the number of people in specific houses, and if they're in different houses, how close are they to each other? There are maps of rock formations, stars, moons, the ocean floor, etc. They're all intended to be used to understand surface features or compare distances or to find certain details. Maps frequently use a key which explains symbols used on the map. The key often runs down one side of the map or along the bottom. And the symbols used may be shapes, such as this picture of a tree or forest. Colors can be used for different heights of the land. Another feature is scale for distance. So if you have the distance of Valelevu from Suva, then maybe you can show the distance using a scale to show how many miles from Suva Valelevu is. A kilometer, 50 kilometers, etc. A measurement can be between numbers equaling 1 kilometer on the ground. You can include this information. So don't forget title, scale, key. So we have a map here of countries in the Pacific serviced by the University of the South Pacific. What is this map actually telling you? It's telling us these are the countries which have a University of the South Pacific in them. It's got north, south, east, west. It should show north, south, east, west. So which way is north? So when you do your own maps, you can include which way is north. If you are doing a map of a village, where are all the houses? So it's got all of the different countries here, which island groups are in the southern hemisphere, which are in the northern hemisphere. So we must look for the equator. So 0 degrees here, equator. So this must be the equator, northern hemisphere, as the Marshall Islands. All of these islands and countries for USP are in the south. These are all questions to do with maps. When you make your own map, which can be included in the report, then you can give information about them. Diagrams. You can include diagrams. This is a diagram of the brain. If you want to include information on COVID-19, how it affects the body, then you can include diagrams. Don't forget, again, include the title, the drawing. Is it cross-sectional, bird's eye view, representational, or stylized? So when you are writing your report, you can include this sort of language. Labels. So read each label to see how they are described. Visual text in assignments and presentations. Why would you use visual data yourself? Visual texts are easy to understand. They are eye-catching, so they catch your eye very fast. When you are reading your textbooks and you see visual texts, probably you will look at them first in order to understand quickly a lot of information. And they are very clear. They can allow a reader to compare and contrast data, comparing similarities, differences. However, visual texts are not intended to be used instead of written text. They complement written text by making it easier to understand. So when you write your report, you will also have your discussion as well as your results. you must also present a written version. The written version is straightforward. What is in the visual? So it is not difficult to write. You should just explain what the figures are telling you. When you turn your data into graphs, tables, maps, and diagrams, you are making sense of it. You are taking a lot of mixed information and putting it into a form which makes it easier for readers to understand. The success of a visual depends on several things. When you are making up your visual aids, you should give enough information. Do not try to put too much information into one figure. If you have too much information, then maybe it will not be very effective. Maybe you need to have 2 diagrams or 2 charts or 2 graphs instead of 1 if you cannot fit it all on one. You should choose the appropriate visual texts. Line graphs are best for changes in data that occur over time. Bar graphs are best to compare numbers or amounts. Pie graphs are best to compare percentages. Maps are best to describe space. Diagrams are best to describe static features, such as parts of a plant or machines or equipment. Graphs, maps, diagrams must be presented accurately and neatly. There are excellent word processing and spreadsheet packages on computers, which will give you the ability to create graphs and tables. Use these and learn how to do the work correctly. So you will not be drawing them yourself unless you cannot find a way in order to present your information properly. In that case, make it very tidy and easy to read. Remember, title for every figure. And these titles will be in your, in the beginning of your essay, which is called List of Figures, labeled axes and keys. So neat shading. So use colors properly. Neat horizontal labels of figures and a frame. So when you are using computers, these things should be included and should probably be there for you. Line graphs. So these should be neat. And bar graphs, everything again should be carefully done and clear to read. Maps should be on a scale and should be included on the map. Diagrams, keep the size under control and make sure that it looks good on the page. Indication verbs. When you are writing your report, the first sentence contains verbs. Show, or demonstrates, or explains. This figure shows. This figure demonstrates. This figure explains. This figure illustrates. These are good words for you to use in your report. Other parts of the written text may use these verbs and other ones as indications. Reveals, consists of, includes. Mostly these paragraphs are written in the present tense. Usually the written text begins with one of the major points or contrasts or trends. Contrasts, comparing and contrasting. Similarities and differences. In this case, there were only 5 pieces of information, so the texts mentioned them. Okay, so it's talking about this. So similar, somewhat higher, demonstrated. Argentina, adult prevalence rate of HIV/AIDS in 1997. Argentina, 0.69 out of 1,000. Austria, 0.18. Botswana, 25.1. New Zealand, 0.07. Zimbabwe, 25.8. So when you write your different paragraphs, your paragraphs should look something like this in the discussion. Table 9.1 illustrates the rate at which HIV/AIDS infection among adults increased in 5 countries in 1997 and demonstrates the differences between rates in developed and developing countries. The lowest rate was found in New Zealand. The 2 developed countries, Argentina and Austria, had similar rates, though Argentina's rate was somewhat higher than Austria at 0.18 per 1,000 adults. Figures for African nations, however, demonstrated a stark contrast. Botswana at 25.1 and Zimbabwe with a weight of 25.8 showed rates were more than 20 times higher the rate of infection in the developed countries. So think about the words that are being used. Illustrates, demonstrates, was found, similar, somewhat higher, more than 20 times higher. Look at the grammar. Make sure you use S correctly. Precise details. Precise figures are normally included. So comparative language, slightly higher, significantly lower. When we talk about a visual, we are usually comparing data, so it's obvious we will need comparative language. Higher than, lower than, more than, less than, the highest, the lowest. Passive. Do not use personal language. You will find was found, not we found. The rest of the verbs are active. Hedging language. Somewhat, rather, tends to be, might be. It is designed to make suggestions rather than claims. The written text is quite short and does not try to explain why or how. But when you are doing your report, you can show why and how, because you are showing how things work. So very sharp, dramatic, rapid rise. The arrow is going straight up. Steady rise, moderate rise, small rise, slight rise, gradual rise. The arrow is increasing, it's rising, it's going up, it's growing. All of this kind of English is acceptable. Rapid, dramatic, sharp, going up very fast. Coming down, decrease, fall, drop, decline, sudden, abrupt, abrupt fall, sudden fall. If the arrow goes up and comes down, it reaches a peak. It peaks like the top of the mountain peak. Sometimes a line plateaus. That means it goes flat, plateau, like a table. So it goes up and then it becomes flat. It plateaus, P-L-A-T-A-E-A-U, plateau or level off. Sometimes a plateau will come down again. To remain constant, no change. It is constant. Fluctuation, just going up and down. Fluctuations, downward trend or upward trend. We can qualify descriptions by using words like sudden or gradual. Gradually going up, slowly going up. We can add other words to make the meaning clearer. These are adverbs we talked about above, but we can look at them in detail. So, words you can use in your report. The increase in the third quarter is considerably steeper than previous quarters. Increases a lot sharper than in previous marks. Big, considerably, significantly, markedly, very much, a lot. Big is not a very good word. Choose a better word. Average, average, somewhat, rather, generally. Small rise, a little, a slight rise. If you want to qualify how accurate data might be, you can use words like precisely, exactly, generally accurate, about, nearly, approximately, roughly, so somewhat. So all of these are examples. How do we describe these arrows? How do we describe these lines? Summary. What have we learned in Unit 9? We have learned to look at graphs, maps, diagrams. Graphs includes line graphs, bar graphs, pie graphs. We have looked at how to use visual data to enhance our work. We have looked at how to write written text to support visual material. These are some words which were used in this unit. Axis, vertical axis, horizontal axis. Two axes. Trend, what is happening over time. Fluctuations, going up and down. Stacked bar graphs which express more than one piece of information. So we had males and females together on one bar. A histogram is a bar graph in which the columns touch each other. Key. If you have a figure, you may need a key. Symbols, colors, shading used in a visual text. Grid references, maybe on a map, using latitude and longitude, possibly. So they are squares in order to find information within. For a map, latitude, horizontal lines, including the equator. Longitude, lines that run up and down. Cross-section, if you are looking at body parts, cross-section. We are looking at an image as though it had been cut through with a knife. So we were looking at a brain, cross-section of a brain. Bird's eye view, maybe we are looking down from above. For a map of a village, etc., map of a street, how does a bird see when they are looking down? Representational, a diagram that is close to life in its details. So we have finished Unit 9 and Unit 10, and we have looked at words that you can use for your results and to describe your results in your discussion. Remember, discussion is not an essay. Discussion is describing your results, which are presented in the form of figures. All right, any more questions to ask? Last chance to ask questions, giving you some time to ask questions. So next week is the last week before you hand in your work on Friday. So next week we will be looking at the marking criteria. I will go over everything again in order to make sure that you understand exactly what you should be doing. And we will be looking at the following topic, which will be the last piece of work, which is, well, normally in term time, but instead of an exam, you'll be doing an essay. So we'll be looking at cause and effect essay and compare contrast essay, which are two more kinds of essays. Oh yes, and we have to also look at your oral presentations. That's what we are doing. So oral presentations will come after writing the essay. So that's the next things that we will be having to look at. Any more questions?
Sir,
Yes.
what about the answered questionnaires? Do we also have this?
I do not need to see them. The answered questionnaires are for you to use in order for you to make your graphs, your charts.
Okay, thank you, sir.
That is for you. I do not need to see them. That is confidential information.
Thank you, sir.
Any more questions? In that case, I will let you go and do your work. And you can send me some emails during the week if you want to ask me questions. Good luck with everything that you are doing for this course and for your other courses. So good night, all of you.
Good night. Thank you very
Very
much.
much.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, bye.
Thank